ignorance, for we forget that we are unified with God. We need to strive back towards that state, for it is something we could tap into. In theory, we should be able to tap into this state of no time and no space, because this is where we come from. We all come from God. We all originate from God. We all are expressions of God. We often forget this, but we have to assume we are, because that's the truth. And we have to have faith that we could tap into God, be able to tap into His knowledge and His will, and also into the concept of no time and space. So, what happened? How did things go wrong? Well, let's look at that in a little more detail. So we have Satan, who had his pride because he saw himself as so wonderful, because all the angels and God were praising him so. And so he created this idea that he was an individual. And with his concept of being individual and being a wonderful individual, he became proud of himself. And that was his fall, because the rest of God and the angels looked down upon this. So, with all that, with Lucifer, now Satan, and his demons separated from God, maybe the concept of time and space might have been partially created here. Lucifer was going farther and farther into himself and wanting to hide more. And perhaps he figured he could, or she figured, one could hide oneself better being dispersed into a group of individuals. So in a sense, that's, I'm assuming, what happens. And we all have this as original sin, this concept of this pride that came all the way from Lucifer, who became Satan. However, we also have God's love, and we're also the seed of God's love, and God's love is seated in us. So in other words, we have this dual nature. So we have to be able to recognize this, but we have to remember that this dual nature is all of it is an expression of God, even the demonic part. And the demonic parts simply result from pride by seeing ourselves as an individual and seeing ourselves as a better individual than other individuals, often for arbitrary reasons. So, because of this pride, pride becomes before the fall, and that is typically our downfall, or would lead to it. So, and with the downfall, well, can we get up again? Well, we could get up again by having faith in God and remembering that we're not individuals, that we're really unified with God, that our individuality, in fact, is an illusion, because somehow we, with God's will and our perception, that's what creates time and space. Modern quantum physics proves that our perceptions do have a key impact on time and space, and even our wishes and our desires can alter the probability of outcomes. So in other words, not only do we create time and space with our perceptions, we might even be able to alter it with our thoughts and our desires, at least to a point. And I guess at the point depends how much our will coincides with God's will. But part of it might depend on other factors too, such as intensity of concentration or faith in the desired outcome. But we have to assume that when we do tap into something like this, something spectacular, and we see miracles happen, that is not ourselves performing them, of course. No, God is working through us. We are merely a vessel, a channel for this. For what we're tapping into is the wonderful, fantastic nature of God. Typically, I feel this when I sense the imaginary territories. When I sense the imaginary territory I'm associated with. The imaginary territories are determined by your value system. This is a concept I came up with. So when I feel that I'm in cahoots, so to speak, with my imaginary territory, i.e. I'm working for them and they're working for me, it's nice to have that relationship, and it's nice to be a part of it. And it feels like I'm on a wonderful mission when I tap into this state. Similarly, healers and other people who perform miracles, I'm assuming, would have this similar wonderful feeling that they're in cahoots with God, working with God, part of a grand mission. And that mission, of course, is to love all beings and to spread the knowledge of God and the love of God for everyone. For everyone is meant to share in this. God, angels, demons, the imaginary territories, individuals, all of these are expressions of God. They're all manifestations of God. And our demons, well, they might not really exist. They might be really our shortfall in our perception because we see ourselves as individuals and because we are prideful in that. So we have all of this being an expression of God, which is all very interesting indeed. And time and space itself, that's an expression of God. And God's will creates the manifestation of time and space that we all see. See, reality, i.e. time and space, is really sort of a shared hallucination. It's basically created as we perceive it. Or at least that's another theory of quantum physics. So in a sense, space and time is constantly being recreated by our perception and by God's will. So with all of this, what happened as mankind, well, became mankind, became individuals in ancient times? Well, what happened there, I'm assuming, is that there were still remnants of this telepathy, for man was more unified with God. And this telepathy was probably used to save oneself in emergency situations. I'm assuming we still have this, part of our instincts, so to speak, that survive within us to this day. Well, what kind of instincts am I talking about? Well, perhaps the instincts might be, perhaps a story might go like this. In ancient times, one of the tribe members became lost from the tribe and had to find their way home. Well, perhaps they were far, far away from the tribe. Maybe